The following podcast is a presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Welcome to Vicious Whispers with Mark Tullius, your source for horror, sci-fi, suspense, and all things violent.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Thank you so much for joining me today on Vicious Whispers with Mark Tullius. Today, we have a very special guest. I was just on his podcast, God, Yay or Nay. Today, we have Noor Kidwai. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, Mark. Thanks for having me, buddy.
Man, I really enjoyed our conversation. I didn't know what to expect. I mean, that when you go on someone's podcast, you don't really know too much about them. But I was just really impressed with just who you are as a person, what you're interested in, and even just the focus of your podcast. Like mine is like, I just want to share my stories and then whatever comes up that week. But you got growth, self-development, and consciousness. Like those are big things. So why did you come up with the podcast? Has this always, like, when did this become important to you? And then also tell us a little bit about, how you got into comedy and which came first. Just tell me, I'd like to find out, like, who you are.
Yeah. And actually, like, the whole, like, planning to do this podcast and, like, actually learning about it, it had a lot to do with, like, me doing writing exercises, because I know we talked about writing on my podcast. And, yeah, I'll tell you, like, maybe like 5-6 years ago, when I was like still just like a working comedian, not making much money, and like really like understanding now, because I'm coming close to 30 years old, and then like slowly understanding like, okay, I gotta like do something different if I'm actually gonna make a career out of this. Because it's just like, when you're in your 20s, you have that idea of just like, nope, you're just going to go out there, work, and like, everybody's just going to give you money and respect, and it's just going to come so easily. But then you get closer to 30 and you're not getting any of that shit. And like, one thing I was really looking for is like my authentic voice, like what makes me different than other people. And I read this book called like Find Your Authentic Voice. It was by Todd Henry. And he had a really good exercise in it. And it was just called like take notables. And what that means is like, always just have like a notepad with you or whatever, or you can use it on your phone. But anytime you have like an emotional response to anything, like just if it's an emotional, it can be anger, it can be happiness, it can be joy, it could be you're unusually connected with somebody, or a conversation you had with somebody just like really made you go like, oh, I was so engaged in everything. And start taking those notables. And like take it, and then like after like a few months, like go look at like what are the shit that's like actually giving you like an emotional drive just naturally. And like when I remember looking back at it, it's like I love talking about meditation, I love talking about psychedelics, I love talking about self-development, and like these were the themes that kept coming up, and I was just like, oh, okay. And like it was funny because like I kind of knew that already, but I didn't know it. Like it just me seeing that on the piece of paper made me go like, oh, these like subjects naturally get me to like just stay focused, naturally get me like enthusiastic about them. So like that's when I found that out, that's when I started incorporating that into my comedy. So like in my comedy act, like I got a lot more stuff on spirituality, I got a lot more stuff on like the mind and how it works and stuff. And it was a lot because of that. And then like when I moved to Toronto, I took Jordan Peterson's writing class, and that was like a really good one too, because it got you to focus on like writing about your past and writing about your future. And like when you were talking about writing about your future, like it was really good at just like asking you like realistically, what do you want? Like what kind of life do you want to make? And like make a freaking plan to get there. And he has like a bunch of other shit. It's like it's a really long writing course. Like if you do it, probably it takes you like 20 hours, so you gotta do it over like whatever, like a few weeks or a month or whatever. So like once I got that done, like I really was understanding like I need to like incorporate these themes into my like into my whole persona, like what I'm gonna be like when people like see me, and like that's how I'm gonna at least be able to get some success in this business. And then that's why I was like a podcast, I needed it. That title God, Yay or Nay just came to me one day on a walk, and I was just like, you know what, that's a good title. Like, I like it. I like the, like, one thing is something I've always kind of like asked people. Like, I never really always asked it like that, but I always like was curious, like, what do you guys think? Because like I'm always like in a spiritual minded kind of guy, so I'm like, how do you create meaning in your life? Like, what do you believe in? Like, do you just believe that like we're just done after this? Do you think there's any more? Like, I always used to ask those kind of questions. So like God, Yay or Nay was just one of those ones which I'm like, I think that's a good question. I think it's a good question for our time too. Like, it's no one even thinks about that shit now, but like, if you just from doing this podcast, like, I've realized like a ton more people are very spiritual these days. They have no essence of religion or anything like that, but they're spiritual. So when I ask them that question, it kind of brings it out of them when it feels like it doesn't really get brought out of, like, these people keep this shit a secret. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's, I don't know. That's kind of where it's went at, man. And yeah, been doing the podcast and incorporating that shit into my comedy. And now I got a bunch of camera equipment and stuff too, so I'm going to be doing like a lot of sketches, and I'm going to keep it on the same theme. So like, yeah, I just think this is kind of like more of my recipe for like being able to create like a little bit of success in my life, right?
That's awesome, man. And yeah, figuring out what motivates you, that's taken me a while too, but I recently got into it. Like, I realized just how much I like talking to people. You know, for so long I was doing the podcast just on my own, and it's like, this is boring. I don't like it. I wasn't seeing friends. But like now, once a week, I'm going on a walk with a buddy, and we're talking for an hour and 20 minutes every time. It's like, and I just come back feeling so motivated. And part of it's the exercise, but it's this conversation that we're having. But I love conversations that are important, and you're having important conversations. I don't like talking about the weather. I don't like talking about sports. I don't give a shit about any of that, man. I don't care for small talk. Like, I want to know what makes this person tick. And then that way I could, I know they're healing by talking about it, whether it's good or bad. And I'm like, okay, they got something cool right there. Like, I'm going to absorb that and try to implement that. So, and I think we both had that idea, like, we really don't know much, like I don't believe any of my beliefs are real. So I was going to ask you this at the end, but with a God, yay or nay question, how much have those answers, have any of them influenced you? How is that? Is it just interesting to you? Because honestly, other people's approach to religion and spirituality probably isn't going to impact me. It's interesting. I asked it yesterday on Facebook, and I had a lot of good answers. Many that it wasn't for me, but I was like, that's cool. I get what you get. But how has that impacted you? And what is your answer to the question?
I guess my answer to the question would be like a yay, and it's more of like in a spiritual sense. I see it more as like and like God is like kind of like an experience of like being connected with everything, like a oneness with everything, and like understanding we're all from the same, you can say, universe or whatever it is. But like, just from my meditation and psychedelics use, like I've had those experiences, and like they've been like the most powerful, like meaningful experiences of my life, right? And like that's kind of how I see it. And like I see it as an experience. That's why like even putting the word to it, I understand that doesn't really do it any justice. But yeah, that's what I kind of see it, an experience, and like a oneness and connectedness, and like we're all kind of coming from the same thing. I feel like we're all kind of just an expression of the universe kind of thing.
That's cool. Yeah, I think, and yeah, to be honest, the first time I saw the name of your podcast, I'm like, because I associate capital G God with, the Catholic Church and their God, and which I had a complete break. I was very, very for a while, I was very anti-religion because of my hatred for, whatever I experienced in the church. But then I got to realize, well, it's not anti-religion, it's anti-Catholic Church. And then I was like, oh, it's not even necessarily that. It still kind of is. But, that doesn't mean that I'm anti-spirituality or any of that. So for me, I had a disconnect, and when that. So I'm trying to like, no, I do see it kind of the same way as you, like, oh yeah, no, we are all connected. And it was, the psychedelics definitely influenced that as well for me. Now with psychedelic, well, before we even get into that, many artists, many comedians, I think, go into, use art as a way to kind of maybe to deal with some stuff that they experience, childhood. And I don't think it has to be really trauma. Like if anyone looked at my childhood, they're like, dude, you didn't have any trauma, but I still had a lot of shit to deal with, low self-esteem and all this other stuff. Do you think that's one reason why you went into comedy and art? Did you feel like you had to get stuff out, or have you always just been kind of like a funnier guy and you see humor and stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. Like, honestly, I don't know if I've like, I'm pretty sure I had like a pretty good childhood and stuff. Like, and like, yeah, I was always kind of like the small kid in my class and like kind of bullied and stuff. And like, I always used humor in that sense. And like, even like I played a lot of hockey when I was growing up. And for some reason, like I got moved up to like teams where like I was like the youngest on the team and I was always playing with people who are a year or two older than me. And it wasn't because I was good. It was more because of just kind of like circumstances and just with the small town I was in. But yeah, those times I was always like the youngest, smallest guy on the team, and I was used to kind of taking like a beating because of that. But like I always used comedy as my like as my tool to like shit on people. And I always had like when I wanted to, and now those times I always had like a sharp mouth of just like making fun of people, especially like the big bully kind of guys. And that's kind of how I got respected. And like the one thing that I remember when I saw it, like I watched a Chris Rock special with my dad when I was like in grade 7. And it was like, I think it was Bigger and Blacker if I wasn't mistaken. But like, he's talking about like the Bill Clinton blowjob. He's talking about like he's talking about OJ Simpson, and like he's talking about gun control, and like he's talking about all these big things. And I just remember like me and my dad were laughing our asses off. And I remember like my dad always used to try to censor stuff for me. Like if it was like, oh, this is too much, you can't listen to it. But when we were watching Chris Rock, we just like shut off and just started laughing our asses off. And I remember that time I was just like, that's what kind of when I was like, I would love to do that. Like it took me like years before I got on stage until I was like 20 years old. But like at that time I was just like, I would fucking love to do that. I was like, holy shit, like this is powerful. And that's where I saw the power in it. And I think that's when it like implanted in my head, like, this is what I want to do.
How difficult was it to get up on stage, man? Because I have incredible respect for anyone who could do it. I was always afraid of public speaking. I was always very shy. Fortunately, I pretty much got over that, but I still couldn't imagine going up on stage and trying to make people laugh.
Yeah, it's like you get a ton of anxiety and a ton of like whatever, the stage fright or whatever the hell it is, like, but you just go and do it. Like there's like, honestly, for that there's nothing I could really say except that like you just have to push through that fucking resistance. It's not fun. And like you get that stage fright for like honestly, you got stage frights there for like 5 years at least, and then like even after the second 5 years it's like back and forth, and like it's only after like a decade where I like get up on stage. For the most part I'm just like confident and comfortable, like it doesn't bother me. But like even now, like if I'm trying new stuff on stage, like because I still bomb once in a while because you're trying new stuff. Like you just wrote down jokes, you're gonna go in front of an audience and like you're gonna try it, and like you never know what happens. Like I wrote down a bunch of jokes during this pandemic, so once it's over, like once where I'm at, once comedy starts opening up again and like I start going out there, it's gonna be fucking like interesting because a few of them aren't gonna work, and like you just have to like you let it bounce off of you and you do your thing. But yeah, I guess I'm not too scared of it. I understand the process, but it's just part of the game now, right?
Have you been able to? It's probably helped you with this, because I talk about like with my kids and everything else about self-worth, how we honestly shouldn't give a shit about what other people think of us. I was always concerned with that, man, especially growing up. I didn't have good clothes, or I was always conscious of stuff. I was always caring what other people thought. And being an author and getting reviews, like, dude, it's awesome when people love you and you get 5-star reviews and like everything else. But then there's also people that don't really care either way. And then there's people that hate you. I was like, my self-worth isn't based off of these people and how they view me, whether it's as an author or as a person. So I'm guessing that's kind of what, has comedy helped you with that too? Like, did your self-worth go down at all because you bombed that night? Or you seem to have a good understanding of it.
Yeah, like I think that comes with maturity, like just as a person, right? But like when I first started, yeah, of course, my self-worth was kind of tied to it. Like if I had a bomb night, and like even like if you weren't like getting the shows you wanted to get on, you weren't getting into the festivals you wanted to get on, like a lot of that did like hurt me, like when I was younger. Like you had to get a mature mindset of being like, you got to work hard for what you want and aim for it and push for it, and like then the shit will come to you. And when you had that mindset, like when it didn't come to you, you can just be like, all right, time to work harder, time to keep focusing, time to do my own thing, don't sit back and wait. And because of that, like now I have like, like I've been getting on a lot of festivals, I've been getting on television, I've been getting on these things because of like that attitude. But I had to get that attitude because like you can't fucking be sitting there and sulking. Like
Yeah.
it's just the worst thing you can do in this business. And I did it for years because like I would be like, oh, how did that guy get the comedy thing? Like
Right.
I'm funnier than that guy, and it's just like nope. And like that's not how shit works. Sometimes it's just the time and the day, and like he was in the right place, I wasn't. Like, but like I'll tell you, one of my favorite quotes by Lao Tzu is like, if you care what people think, you will always be their prisoner. And
Mm.
like, I fucking love that quote. And I always used to keep that in my head. And it took me years to like actually understand what that meant, because like, there's a point in a comedy career where you go from being like the guy who's learning to be a comic, learning to write jokes, to being your own artist, where you're like, okay, now it's time for me to like actually put my personality into this shit. Because like my first 10 years of comedy, I would just be writing jokes that like I learned how to write jokes, and I was just writing jokes that I would be like, oh, the whole audience is gonna like this. And they would be like very simple jokes, but like I could make a whole audience laugh with it. And I always used to be like, that was kind of my goal. It's like, oh, I want to have the whole audience laughing. And it's just like, it's a goal that you can do, but like at the end of the day, you realize it just doesn't mean anything because I'm not putting any of my personality in it. Because like once you do put your personality in it, you're going to turn off people. Like you're going to have people who hate you, like you said, but then you're going to have other people who fucking love you and can't get enough of you. And that's where you want to be at. That's how you build a career. Because those people, like, I can just do a whole show where everyone's happy with the show, but no one's like freaking like, oh, I got to be following this guy. I got to be like checking out his things. Like, no, but when I go do a show where I'm like now, like, I don't give a shit what the people think. Like, I got to start like digging in and actually see like, what do I want to talk about and what do I want to make jokes about? When you do that, you're going to piss off people. Or you're just going to be completely not their taste. They're just going to be like, what the
Right.
fuck's this guy talking about? Like when I started like talking about spirituality a little bit more, and like just my religious background, like coming from a Muslim family and stuff, like when I started like talking about that shit, like some people just fucking loved it. They were just like, holy shit, this is different. This is like deep. This is fun. Like they loved it. Other people are like, ugh. Like, you can tell. Then like I used to like my old self would care about that guy who's doing that and being like, oh no, I'll tell you some sex jokes, or like, and like, I'll just be like that. But like now it's just understanding like who gives a shit. Like I got to do it for myself and like do it. That's a successful formula, because you're being authentic, and like the people who feel it and like they vibe with you or resonate with you for whatever reason, that shit will like fucking take off. It's like the same with your writing. Like you're writing about your dark and disturbing like themes that you have in your books and your novels. It's like that's you, and like you have to do that. And if you try to be like, oh, this might be a little too dark, well, let me just make it a little bit so everybody can enjoy it,
Yeah.
then the whole thing doesn't work anymore, right?
Yeah, no, I think you're right, man. We got to be faithful to ourselves, to our vision, and yeah, I think that's what people respond to. They can tell. Now, are there, especially with this fucking cancel culture and everything PC and all that shit, are there subjects that you just won't touch? Do you care about that? Do you think about that?
No, I fucking don't care anymore. Like, when I moved to Toronto, like Toronto is like one of those places which is like you have an ultra, like, I guess you can call it like woke or like ultra woke or left wing like area of the comedy scene, and then you have like this like the right wing guys, or I don't know if that would be right wing guys, but they're more of just like they like to offend you, so they're like the ultra offensive guys. So like you have these two like extremes of the comedy world, and like I don't know, I didn't personally fit in with either of them, but like I had a lot of friends in like the offensive side, so I did hang out with those guys a lot. And like the cool thing with them is like you can say whatever the fuck you want and they didn't care. So like I didn't mind that. Like the woke people like got annoying after a while. Like I just don't like any kind of censorship. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Even though like once in a while you go to the people who are trying to be offensive on purpose, and like, you know, for me, like a lot of times I just rolled my eyes at some of the shit they said, just because like I'm like, you know, I'm like, I know what you're doing. You're just trying to be a troll. You're trying to be a shock comic. Like that shit I have zero respect for. But like the people, like the comics themselves, like I became friends like purely because they were the ones who accepted me first when I came to Toronto, right? But like I had all my other clubs that I did which were just like regular clubs. They didn't have any kind of lean anywhere. And that's usually where I like to do my shit. But yeah, the woke stuff, I hate that whole trying to censor, you can't say shit, and like I just don't give a shit. Like yeah, like I like I don't care. If somebody comes up and says you can't say that, like I just like, all right, like whatever. Like I've been told that like before, like like I'm gonna say it next show. Like I don't know, like are you gonna keep running around? Like I don't care. Like please, like tweet it. It might actually get me more exposure.
I know. I've thought about that. I've thought about just can't like, hey, this is probably could be considered offensive, you know, check this out. But I was like, yeah. But yeah, no, not caring about that stuff is awesome, man. And you just can't. You can't. You just got to be yourself. Now, I am going to so I'm almost done with the traumatic brain book, dude. I'm so excited. I just finished a chapter on how good writing can be for you, whether it's fiction, you know, taking the notes like you were mentioning, gratitude journal, you know, directed writing, looking at a moment in your past or whatever. So got that done. The next one is going to be on breath work and meditation. Then I have psychedelics, and I almost wasn't going to include it. But I talk about in the book, like I think that's a big thing, especially for people that have, you know, the mental health issues, that have traumatic brain injuries, you know, because they probably have depression, anxiety, trouble thinking, all these other things, trouble controlling their emotions. Managing emotions is huge, you know, the impulse control and aggression, irritability. For me, it's been cannabis. That's been what has helped me, I think, and calmed down my brain and everything else. So I was like, I need to write about it. But I'm wondering, you know, what has psychedelics done for you? What would you recommend? And also, do you ever worry about any repercussions for talking about it openly? Like in my head, I'm like, well, you know, if I talk about using cocaine or DMT, I could say, I was like, man, I'm an author. I make shit up, you know.
Yeah.
Do you ever worry about that? Do you ever worry about being a bad influence on someone because you recommended something, you know?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. I've never really worried about it, I guess. Like my first episode on my podcast is like me when I went to Mexico. I did like 6 ceremonies of ayahuasca out there. So basically I just like outlined every ceremony, what happened, like what I experienced, like what I learned from it. Like, so yeah, like I don't know, like I guess I can't claim ignorance if I ever get like fucking shot down for that. But like I don't know, I don't think it matters anymore. Who cares? Like, yeah, I don't know, man. Fucking like psychedelics have been just like the fucking like a really really powerful like tool for me to like help me out. Like I've been working with ayahuasca for the last 6 years, and I'll do it like once a year. I'll do like a couple ceremonies usually, and it, like honestly, like ayahuasca has like transformed me like so much, like every time you do it. And yeah, like I don't know if you want to go into it.
Yeah, so how has it transformed you? You know, what do you think you got from it? were you able to kill parts of your ego? Like I've heard different friends talk about it. It sounds miserable. Like for me, like the DMT was attractive because it was nice and quick and it was done. One of my buddies told me about his ayahuasca and he said they were shitting and throwing up and it was awful, but it was also great. I was like, well, I don't want all that awful shit. I want the great relaxing stuff, but maybe I need it, you know, maybe.
No, the awful stuff is like it it's what teaches you. Like like honestly, like they always say like the tribes people like say like ayahuasca, like they call it mother ayahuasca, and it's like she's always like she gives you what you need, and like she can be like a strict like give you that tough love, but it's because you need it. And so like the first time I did it, I went like I actually flew to Peru. I went into like the Amazon and like I went like completely like, you know, like it got to the point where I'm like hiking into this like place and like doing it with these tribes people and shit out there. And you know, the first trip I did, like it was very like it was very gentle, and most people I've noticed like the first time you do ayahuasca it's extremely gentle because like you're scared shitless. Like, and trust me, like I was scared shitless because like I was just kind of sitting there in the jungle like away from everything and just being like, ooh, maybe this wasn't a smart idea, you know. Like so I remember taking it and like it was just like it was teaching me a little bit. I first puked, but like that puke, what it is, like when you puke and it feels so good. Like it you feel it like taking shit like from your body. Like I literally felt all the blood in my body, like all the like circulation and shit, and it was like removing this thickness from it. And it was like I felt it from my toes, my fingertips, my head, and it all came to my stomach. And like this thickness started coming to my stomach and I felt this thick shit in there. And then all of a sudden I like just got up, grabbed my bucket, and it was just like puking, and it just like it was the relief in this puke. Like I was just relieved from it. I felt so light. And afterwards I was just like, holy shit, like I just feel so good. And like that was the first one. Like it was like a pretty nice kind of trip. And like I like the stuff I was learning about was more of just like because like every time you do ayahuasca it like teaches you, you actually feel like I'm in connection with a spirit that's or some sort of, what I don't know what to say, spirit might be the wrong word, but whatever, if you're in connection with a higher intelligence that's trying to show you something. And like the first time I did it, it was showing me about like my beliefs in my life that are just based on nothing. Like it was showing me about the parts of my spirituality that are just completely like bogus. Like what are your beliefs in this about? And it was showing me that, and it made me like, so like the first time I did ayahuasca, it made me a lot more logical, a lot more analytical and rational, like which people would think is like the exact opposite of doing a psychedelic. But like psychedelics have done this for me. Like over the years, it's made me a lot more logical, analytical, and masculine. Because it was showing me like a lot of the feminine parts of myself that are too much expressed, and I need to like express my masculinity more too. And like so like it's funny like how like we have these ideas of like psychedelics being more feminine or psychedelics being more like spiritual woo-woo shit, but like it can make you more logical. But the second time I did it, so the second time I take it and we drink it, and it's fucking like the taste is so disgusting. And like I go and I sit down on my mat and I'm just like trying to keep it down, because it felt like when you like take a shot of whiskey and your stomach's like, all right, it's coming back up. So like I was just sitting on my mat just waiting like for it to go down, and I waited like 20 minutes, and then I just like kind of puked it up. And then I was just sitting there like, oh, like did I puke it all up? Like, am I done? Like, do I have to go take more? So I sat there for like 2 hours and nothing was happening, and I could tell everybody else was like high on it and shit. So like I was just kind of sitting there like, should I take more? And like I don't know, I was like, you know what, like I just don't feel like doing it tonight. So I just went back to my hut like in the jungle, right? So like and it's just completely dark. I just go back to my hut and lay down. And then like once I lay down, this like huge fever comes over me, and like it's already like plus 35 in the frickin' whatever that is in Fahrenheit in the jungle. And like yeah, it's hot. So like I'm freaking just sweating. my body's aching all over, and I'm just like, holy shit, like, did I get malaria? I'm just thinking all these things, and I'm like, what the fuck's wrong? I'm gonna die. And it got to the point where I'm just like kind of like fucking like, holy shit, I think I'm gonna die. I just started freaking out. My whole body was freaking out, and I was in so much pain, and I was just like drenched in sweat, and it was just like so bad until like there was a click where they clicked with me, and then all of a sudden I was like, I started feeling like, oh wait, this is the medicine doing this to me. Like this is the ayahuasca, and it's just like, and then like like all of a sudden I was looking, or like I was just feeling it, and it was just like showing me like, it was like literally showing me like how much pain there is in the world right now. Like there's so much pain, and it was like, how easy is your life compared to other people in the world? Like it was showing me that, and it's just like, how have you never shown gratefulness for anything that you have in your life? And like that's what it was showing me. And like I remember like I started begging the ayahuasca just because I was in so much pain and like just feeling so shitty. I was just like, I'm so sorry. Like I'll be more grateful. Like I'll stop taking life for granted. I'll be more grateful. I'll be more grateful. And like I was just saying that, and then like all of a sudden like I had a purge. I went to the bathroom and I just started like violently puking, and it was just all this shit coming out. Like you can feel like, it feels like something inside you, like a negative part of you is just coming out. And I just started puking like 5 times, like just like an insanely violent puke. Like this one didn't feel good like the other time one did. But once that happened, and like it was all out of me, like this beautiful like calmness just came over my like whole body. And like I just went and laid down on my bed, and then the medicine just started showing me all the people in my life, and was just kind of showing me like how you should be grateful for all these people, for all these things that are in your life. And like it like showed me what gratefulness is. Like gratefulness is just like something that your whole body can experience. It's like it's gratefulness is like some of the most powerful forces, and you need to have that, and you need to practice this when you go back to your regular life, is like practice gratefulness. And like this is how more opportunities and shit like that happen. And yeah, and like honestly, it took away a ton of fears about like from me too. I went and got my visa to the UK after that trip, because like I was always so scared of it. But like right after I went back home, I got my visa to the UK, and I went and like started doing comedy out there for a little while, which like it didn't end up working out there, but like it was just one of those things that I needed to do. It's like I had this idea, and I was sitting on it for years and just never doing it. And it's just like once I did that, it was just like when I was in the medicine, it's just do it. Like do it, and like it'll help you grow. And like that's what it did. It never worked out. Like I went there and I was like, okay, I don't want to really live here. It's not like I like when I got there, I was like, I can tell this isn't my kind of scene. But it was still a great experience for me to like perform in another country, and like meet different people, and like just experience all that shit. But when I came back, I was so much more self-assured of like what I wanted to do. And that's when I moved to Toronto after that. It was just like really understanding who I am, and like that trip really helped out. So like it does move like those mental blocks and stuff like that, fears, anxieties and shit like that. And over the years I just kept doing it every year, and every year it like taught me something different, and really helped me with my anxiety. Like my anxiety is like so much more calmed down than it was like when I first started this shit.
Now, how much more powerful do you think this is? Because I think that's probably one of the key differences. Because I could read a book, and see all these great quotes and understand, see all the science between why gratitude is great for me and everything else. But whether or not that's really going to take hold of me. But it seems like with ayahuasca, like those messages are kind of now ingrained in, like you understand that that's a new truth that you have.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's a perfect way of putting it, man. It's like that's now in my body. Like when you take these substances, like you're getting a connection to your body that you just never felt before, or most of us never felt before. That's why and that's why we do stuff like meditation and breath work, right? Like we do that because it kind of brings us back into our body, and just kind of like you understand that you have to have that connection. And when you have a healthy connection with your body, your intuition and your direction in life is like a lot easier to go through because you feel it in your body. Like everything you feel first in your body to like kind of be like, nope, this is like the right thing. Like your intuition is so fucking deep. Like it can tell you like so many things like before your mental mind, your mind, like your thinking mind will even fucking touch on. So like if you can get in touch with those feelings in your body that are kind of like telling you like, oh, this person's not somebody you want to be with, or like, hey, this is the direction you need to be going in, just fucking go in it. And like the feelings will tell you. Like that's like one thing with these psychedelics and with meditation and breath work is like how you notice that. And like when you like get that gratefulness, when I felt it like that and I felt gratefulness through my whole body and understood that, that stuck with me for years. And like I do know when I'm swaying away from like when I'm not being grateful and shit, and that's usually when I get into like a more depressed attitude or something like that. But like now at least I have that tool and I have that memory in my body. Is like anytime I'm in a bad like in a kind of a shitty place, I just kind of go back to like, all right, what am I grateful for? Like think about it, bring that feeling back. And like that's usually just a really good tool to just help me like get a more positive attitude and like be able to like tackle shit.
That's cool. And for those that are listening that never want to try psychedelics, that are maybe afraid and it's too much, like I just had this major breakthrough a week ago because I was with a Wim Hof instructor. He came over to the house. I've been doing his online breath class. Wasn't a huge fan, man, because sit there for an hour to breathe is tough. But I enjoyed it. It was good. But to prepare me for the ice bath, which I was really looking forward to and anxious about, we went even deeper on the breathing. And after the Wim Hof breathing, man, it was like 5 minutes of my body just like uncontrollably shaking. So like I got my body primed, and he's doing this guided meditation, and I was able to give gratitude to things that had always been a negative. And like those little instances, I think those stuck with me because I put my body through all of this. And so that's one reason why I'm interested in it. But I was like, yeah, here's psychedelics. Here's another tool. So I think, you have the breathing and the meditation, and those are great tools. You have psychedelic, another great tool, and then combining them all. Now with the ayahuasca, how important is it or for you at least, how important was it for you to be around others, to be with a shaman or whatever, someone to guide it? Like, is that necessary?
Yeah, I would think so. Like I wouldn't want to do it by myself. Like it's powerful, man. And like you want to be around these kind of guys who fucking do it like properly. Like if I recommend it to anybody, I'll just say like find people who have been doing it for a while and like it's safe. Like you had somebody else like or people who have been there, and that's the only way I've done it. And like the one thing I say is like when you're like the medicine's right for you and you want to do it, like it usually finds you. Like all the opportunities like just kind of popped into my lap. And like and like I remember like just the first time I did it, like we picked up a hitchhiker when I was we were driving to go to a comedy show. We picked up a hitchhiker, and I remember I was thinking about ayahuasca so much, and then we were talking with this hitchhiker, and he just said like, oh yeah, I did ayahuasca in this place in Peru. And like I was just like, what? And like he told me the whole story about it, and like that's the place I ended up going to. Like it's one of those things, like when the medicine's ready, like it'll come to you. And then I started doing it in Canada since, because like even a year after that, when I was like, maybe I should get back into like ayahuasca, I'm like, but I just don't want to go to Peru and shit. And then I met like an old friend, and she was just kind of telling me like, oh no, we do this ayahuasca thing here. And I was just like, get me on the list. And then that's the reason I was able to do it like every year since that.
Would you recommend it? Like, if someone's going through a super hard time, let's say they just had a really traumatic something happen in their life, is that a safe time to do it? Like, is there a good time, a bad time, or just?
I think like I said, I'm not the guy to like ask the questions about like the mental health issues, because like if you have like schizophrenia and stuff in your background, like shit like that, like you probably shouldn't do it. And like ask somebody who's experienced, because the other thing is like if you're on certain medication, and I'm not sure which ones they are, like it might be stuff for depression or maybe for certain personality disorders. So I'm not sure. So like if you're on any of those medications, anything, like you have to talk with the people and be very open with it so that you can just understand. So like I think that's a thing. But like man, like the first time I did it, the lady like who was beside me, she was like 65 years old. She fucking got divorced like in the last few years. She lost her son in the last few years, and she overcame cancer in the last few years. So like this person had a shit ton of trauma in her, and she did it. She did it, and like she stayed for longer. Like we all did it for 2 or 3 times. She stayed for like 7 or 8 times. Like after we were even gone, because she had more healing to do, and like her freaking her like experiences were intense because like the one thing psychedelics do like a lot is like if you have like a pain or something or a trauma deep down inside of you that you're not really aware of, they'll bring it out, they'll bring it to the awareness. That's why it can be scary, but like the more you do it, the more you learn to like calm down your body, calm down your mind, and allow it to come out and just kind of witness it. And you understand like witnessing it kind of gives you an idea of what it is and like really helps heal it. And that's kind of like the whole process of what this shit is. And like yeah, like it can be tough when you have like a really bad one like that lady had, because I remember she struggled during her times because it was really painful for her. But afterwards I remember talking with her and she was just like, oh, it's been so long since like I felt like love for myself. Like you could tell it was just so healing for her. And like it's just one of those things. So like, yeah, I don't know, like yeah, I was even thinking the same thing. Like my dad just had a stroke, and I like injured my shoulder, and I was in like so much pain in the last month. So and like with my dad and that shit, like it was just such a really rough time for me in January mostly. And I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, shoot, like if I had the chance to do ayahuasca right now, would I do it? And it's just like, you know, maybe it's a better thing to wait until you're like feeling a little bit more solid. I think that's probably a smart idea. But like I said, it's a healing thing. Like I know a lot of people who've been like in really like depressed places, and ayahuasca helps with depression a lot. Like ayahuasca also helps with getting people off of heroin. Like they show it has like a higher success rate of getting people off of heroin than fucking a lot of clinics do.
Wow.
You know, like so like it really, yeah, it's really like a fucking just powerful, man. Like when you do it, like you feel like you're talking with like a intelligence that's like greater than you.
That's awesome. No, I'm gonna get you convinced me. I'm gonna do it. Now, how about anything else? How about like I'm reading well, about to try to reread it, How to Change Your Mind with Psychedelics.
Oh yeah, Michael Pollan.
Yeah, so I'm gonna read that. I'm gonna see what other suggestions there are. Right now, I don't feel like I need a whole lot, but I know I do. Like with the ayahuasca, I know I would get over something. I know I would learn something. You know, I no longer feel like I you know, and that's why I feel good wrapping up the brain, because like, man, like I've transformed myself from 3 years ago, you know, as far as my mental health state and everything else. But I'm curious, you know, like I have friends that do microdosing and they swear by it. And I've seen the studies and they seem good. It's like, you know, is there anything else that you've done that has given you positive effects that might be worth mentioning?
Yeah, like mushrooms have always been a good thing for me. Like I've kind of like ever since I started doing ayahuasca 6 years ago, mushrooms, I just haven't really dabbled in them too much, maybe a couple times, but that was more of just like out at the cabin, wanted to grab some mushrooms and like stare at the stars kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, like mushrooms like were really good for me at the beginning of my like journey. And it was just like the first time I did it in Alberta where I was living. Like we have this place called the Badlands. That's where all the dinosaur museums are, because that's where they like find all the dinosaurs and shit. But like it's just like a really beautiful like old school kind of looking place. It looks like desert, but then all these canyons are there, which just have beautiful like, you know, rivers and shit like that running through them. So we did it then, and we just had a blast just like hiking through this area and laughing like girls and like just like, it was just like just a fun time. But I remember that was the first time. This was really early in my comedy career, but like I remember that was the first time I saw like how my creativity worked, and like I kind of saw like how it, like connections formed to like form a joke. And like I remember just making a joke, but like I remember seeing like just being so aware of like how my minds work, and I just remember seeing the connection like coming with a joke, and like yeah, that shit was really good for me. Like it really made me understand like how to write a joke. Like it helped me like creatively for a fucking like long time after that. So like yeah, those things are always like I think mushrooms are great too. The only thing is like anytime you do psychedelics, there's the thing about setting. Like if I'm doing it with my friends and we're hiking, like you can get some good shit out of that, and like it'll definitely be a therapeutic thing. I think most of the time you do it, it's going to be therapeutic. But at the end of the day, it's not going to be like you're not doing that introspection. Like if you want to do it, and I've never done it with mushrooms, but like you're going to have to do it in the dark. You're going to have to yeah, like I would look it up on the internet for the proper way to do it, but like those are the ways where you actually like, and do it with an intention. If you're gonna fucking do psychedelics, like a lot of times have that intention. And like sometimes I never knew what my intention was. It was more of just like me saying like I want more direction in my life. That's like that would be my intention when I wasn't too sure about what I want to deal with. But like a lot of people, if you come in and you have an intention like, oh, I'm depressed all the time, I want to deal with that, or oh, like my relationship needs healing and this, or like any of that shit, like have an intention. And if you do it in the dark and you actually like fucking go in with the medicine, you'll notice that there's a communication with the medicine, and like you can and like you'll get the answer you want, like, or not the answer you want, you'll get the answers of what you're asking about. And like it's crazy, and it's fucking yeah, and trust me, when you come out of that, you're just gonna fucking your mind's gonna be blown, because you're just gonna be like, what the fuck was that? You're like, well, all right, like how do these substances do this shit? Because it's hard not to be like some sort of spiritual after that, you know.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. I get it. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. I got to figure it out. I have like a month to plan it, but it, like what you said though about making those connections. Like I recently just got connected with someone, and he was telling me, oh yeah, like, we could do that. So
yeah, no, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
When it's ready, it comes your way. Like it's for some reason these fucking substances work like that. I don't know why.
That's cool. And dude, even this conversation, like, you know, a month ago, I didn't know we would be talking about this. I didn't even consider it, but yeah, so it's awesome how life works when you're open to it. Like we're both open to it, so it's happening. Dude, thank you so much for being on here, man. This has been an awesome conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ben.
Where should people check you out? I was on your YouTube page earlier. Is it best just type in your name?
Yeah, well, like if you want, like my website is noorkidwai.com. And like that's like the best spot. Like it has all my YouTube videos on there too. So like if you want to check out like some of my earlier comedy, that's what's on there from like a couple years ago. And yeah, they've been doing really well. So like yeah, go check out that shit. And yeah, hopefully once the pandemic's done, like I want to film like a new special next year. So like hopefully that's what I'm going to be working on this year. And then my podcast is on there and on all podcast platforms, God, Yay or Nay. And if people are interested in that ayahuasca shit, like my first episode is me doing the 6 ceremonies, which was just last year. And if you really are interested in it, that's a fun episode to listen to, because I go through every ceremony and I really just tell you what I experienced and like how I learned from it. So if you want to understand like how you can learn from these substances, I think that's a really good episode. And then like, yeah, your episode's on there and a bunch of others are on there too. So yeah, God, Yay or Nay, and my website, noorkidwai.com.
Awesome. And I'll put those links down below. Definitely recommend everyone checking you out. Yeah, man, it's been a pleasure. I always go out on a short story. I was trying to figure out one that was spiritual or whatever, but I couldn't. So I'm just going to go with, right now I've been playing the short stories from 25 Perfect Days. So we're going to go out on one of those. It's called 13th on the List. Thank you again so much for being on the podcast. It has been awesome, man. I appreciate you sharing all this information. And yeah, man, I hope you have an awesome day.
Hey, thanks, brother.
Thirteenth on the List, September 11th, 2041. The sun inched over the mountain, and light slid across the massive facility nestled at the bottom of the valley. 40 yards up, Jeremy Adams lay motionless, blending in between two boulders, his tan cloak perfect camouflage against the desert rock. He counted 16 men down below in beige fatigues, but Jeremy didn't have anything against them. He placed his eye to the Bushmaster's scope and panned to the heavily secured front gate, the one area not protected with electrified razor wire fence. 6 guards with light machine guns, 2 more in the security booth. Another 8 were spread across the grounds, moving along the perimeter and watching over the massive white silos Jeremy had been instructed to avoid. There was no way of knowing exactly how many men were inside the massive storage area built into the mountain and the blue building in the corner, which served as the Bradfords' living quarters. Jeremy zoomed in on the tallest guard at the front gate. For private security, the man was well equipped. His precise gait and perfect posture meant ex-military. Jeremy tracked one guard after another. Most of them were in their 30s or 40s. Their experience didn't worry him. Jeremy was only 20, but in the 3 years he'd been in the field, he'd probably killed more men and women than these guards combined. He took his first life at 15, and recruiters immediately recognized his determination and complete lack of emotion. While his brother and former classmates had fucked off in high school, Jeremy's handlers trained him in the art of death. Killing became his business, and these days, business was booming. Jeremy adjusted his position against the rock and ran the numbers in his head. He earned 0.01% off each hit, but the combined net worth of the first 12 people on his list totaled $53 billion. The Bradfords added an additional 18, meaning Jeremy would clear over $7 million tax-free. Maybe, if his family heard that, they wouldn't be so quick to judge. He needed to focus. The string of recent deaths had put the wealthy on alert. Some went about their lives hoping it was just a coincidence. Others hid. Most, though, hired security details like this one. But Jeremy knew that was all false hope. No one was ever truly safe. He checked his watch. If intel could be trusted, Jeremy only had to wait another 5 minutes. Every Saturday at that time, Kyle Bradford opened the living quarters door, walked his wife down the short walled path, kissed her goodbye, and watched her drive off to pick up their son. When Deborah crossed the front gate, Kyle would head into the mountain and begin work. Only today would be different. There would be no goodbye kiss. Deborah's silver Hummer and Kyle's black Jeep were parked a dozen yards from the building's door, a mere 73 yards from Jeremy's position. No wind to deter his shot. He'd take out Deborah and then Kyle before she hit the ground. Jeremy pulled his eye away from the scope and stared at the picture of his sister, taped to the stock. Photos were forbidden on missions, but Jenny went with him everywhere. She started him down this path, and it was to her he repented before every hit. After a few silent words, Jeremy set his sights on the blue building. He ran the plan in his head. 2 rapid shots, possibly 3. Empty the 10-round magazine on the closest guards, then retreat up the mountain. He'd be back at his car within 5 minutes. Gone in 15. Movement at the gate. A flashing red light at the top of the booth. A car approached on the lone road that sliced through the desert. A black-bottom, red-top town car, silver-tinted windows. Official car of the Church of the American Way. Jeremy threw protocol out the window and clicked on his earpiece. He should have been alerted. The car stopped at the gate, and a guard approached the window. In the quietest whisper, Jeremy said, "We got company." "It's just support." Captain Hayden sounded pissed. "Now get off the channel." Jeremy didn't typically work with others, especially the way. "Negative. Shake them." "Do as you're told," Hayden said. The earpiece went silent, and the front gate rolled to the left. The town car drove around the blue building. It parked. Jeremy could only see one side. The passenger door opened, and a young man in a silver suit stepped out. He combed his slick black hair, looked right at Jeremy's location, and gave a little nod. Jeremy ignored the goosebumps in the little voice telling him to fall back to the car and never look back. He told himself that having some help only increased his odds. Silversuit stayed where he was. He spoke with the driver. A few seconds later, the building's front door opened. Jeremy laid his finger against the trigger guard and steadied his breath. With a twist of the scope, Kyle Bradford's profile filled the sight, the crosshairs rising and falling from the top of his thick eyebrows to the bottom of his ear. Jeremy zoomed out and watched as Deborah met the morning, the sun blasting off her long blonde hair. The Bradfords headed down the walkway. Jeremy hoped they'd say goodbye in front of their vehicles. Otherwise, he'd have to deal with a waist-high wall. If he missed, the target could drop and hide. The Bradfords continued down the path. Jeremy zoomed in on Deborah and relaxed his breathing even more. He cut the target area to the quarter-sized spot around her temple. Deborah stopped and hugged Kyle. Jeremy's finger inched off the trigger guard and slipped inside it. The groove of his knuckles settled against the metal. As he was about to take the shot, Deborah bent down like she dropped something, ruined Jeremy's sight picture. When she stood, the back of Deborah's head filled the sight. Jeremy held his breath and applied more pressure on the trigger. Deborah turned slightly, holding their 2-year-old son in her arms. Jeremy jerked the rifle to the right, just as the shot fired. The boom echoed through the mountains, and the bullet punctured the side of the Hummer. Kyle grabbed hold of Deborah and rushed her and the child toward his Jeep as the facility's alarm blared. Kyle threw open the Jeep's front door, and Jeremy squeezed off another round. The bullet struck Kyle in his side and knocked him to the ground. Kyle got to his knees and waved Deborah away. She disappeared behind the wall with the boy. Jeremy waited to finish Kyle. He hoped the man's suffering would draw out his wife. Kyle started to pull himself into the vehicle, which forced Jeremy to take the shot. The .50 caliber round splattered Kyle's head against the inside of the door. Bullets peppered the mountainside as the guards blindly fired in Jeremy's general direction. He had to kill both Kyle and Deborah for the mission to succeed, but she was behind cover, and if he took another shot, the guards would pinpoint his location. Some of the bullets had already come close. The guards stationed around the silos were closing the distance. So were the ones walking the perimeter. The ones at the gate kept their posts, guns aimed at the mountainside. The tall guy loaded a rocket launcher. Jeremy couldn't rely on the way to finish the job, and it was too late to retreat. He had one option, and it wasn't good. His first shot split the brow of the guard with the rocket launcher. His second knocked down the one running for the fallen weapon. The third and fourth shots stopped 2 guards rushing toward the base of the mountain. The fifth missed the guy firing from the side of the living quarters, and Jeremy fell behind the rock as the gunfire found him. Dirt and chips of rock filled the air. There were at least 10 guards left, no sign of the way, and a loaded rocket launcher. Time to move. Jeremy freed a smoke grenade and rolled it down the hill. The heavy white clouds rose, and Jeremy flipped down the face shield of the helmet hidden under his cloak as he ripped Jenny's picture from the rifle. He leapt to his feet and took off running. A round hit Jeremy's chest, bounced off his body armor, and staggered him. Before the smoke cleared, Jeremy pulled the M14 slung across his back and dropped down behind a cluster of rocks, 15 yards from his original spot. They'd known he was in the vicinity. The smoke was gone. The shooting stopped. Looking through a crack between two boulders, Jeremy could see Deborah crouched behind the wall, her blue shirt barely visible. There were two guards kneeling beside her, with their guns aimed at the last place Jeremy had been. Another guard was positioned by the Hummer, waving her toward him. Jeremy eased the barrel of the M14 into the crack and tracked the guard who had retrieved the rocket launcher. Killing Deborah was a top priority, living to see payment even higher. The man fidgeted with the weapon, couldn't quite balance it on his shoulder. Jeremy's round punched through his forehead, dropping him and the launcher onto the ground. All guns turned toward Jeremy's location and opened fire. He got off 2 more lethal shots before pulling back. Jeremy blocked out the deafening roar of guns and the piercing alarm and visualized where each of the remaining guards were positioned. The biggest threats were the ones at the fence line nearest the rocket launcher and the 3 by Deborah. Jeremy took a grenade from beneath his cloak and pulled the pin. He couldn't throw it anywhere near the child, and there was no way he could reach the fence line, so he lobbed it at the corner of the living quarters. The grenade bounced to a stop by the feet of the firing guard, gave the guy just enough time to stare down before it exploded, shredding his body and blowing a hole through the wall. Jeremy scrambled to the left, jumped over rocks, his feet sliding on the slippery terrain as bullets whizzed around him. A rocket slammed into the boulder he'd been behind and blasted him off his feet. Jeremy flew through the air, his right cheek smashing into a rock, shattering with a loud crunch. If he stayed still, he'd be dead. He hugged his weapon to his chest and threw himself on his side, rolling down the mountain, his armor only providing minimal protection against the jagged rocks. He tumbled down the last 20 yards, braced himself for impact, and barely felt the sharp sting of a bullet rip through his calf. Several other bullets bounced off his armor as he banged down the hillside. His left forearm snapped when he slammed into the ground. Staying down meant death. Jeremy got to his feet and brought up the M14 one-handed, his aim unsteady. He pivoted toward the walkway and saw Deborah behind the wheel of her vehicle. 3 guards surrounded her, fired at Jeremy, and yelled at her to drive. Headshot, headshot, short blast to one guy's chest. All 3 dead, as Jeremy got floored by a blow that felt like a baseball bat. He rolled onto his back and looked toward the mountain. The massive foot-thick gate was stuck halfway open. A guard racked another slug into his 12-gauge. Jeremy took aim, put the guard down, then turned toward the squeal of tires. Rubber spun on the warm concrete. The Hummer's rear snaked back and forth. Jeremy hobbled toward the Jeep and stepped over Kyle as the way car screeched around the corner. The silver suit on foot hightailed it toward the silos with his pistol dangling at his side. The keys waited in the ignition. Jeremy started the bullet-riddled Jeep and floored the gas as the way car flew past the Hummer and disappeared into the mountain. The Hummer sped by the silver suit. The guy never even raised his gun. Instead, he faced Jeremy's Jeep and aimed. Jeremy flicked on his earpiece. "Support hostile. Repeat, support is hostile." Jeremy swerved. A bullet smashed through the windshield, knocking out his rear view. A thunderous explosion ripped through the day. The Jeep shook as a blast of heat shot out from the mountain. The man in the silver suit kept his feet and tossed something small beside the silos. He smiled big. No fear of death, only expectation in his eyes. Jeremy spun the wheel, but it was too late. Everything was red, the air an oven of fire. All 4 wheels were off the ground, and Jeremy's world went black as he flew end over end. The pain was so intense, he had to be alive. Jeremy slid the vial from his collar, injected it into the unroasted side of his neck. The effect was immediate, although temporary. Jeremy cracked the helmet free from his skull. He felt for the earpiece and instead found a lump for an ear. His right eye was stuck shut, but his left eye could open. A fiery inferno rushed from the mouth of the mountain and merged with the silos. It seemed to Jeremy like a tongue lashing back and forth, its brilliant blue tips scorching the sky black with dark smoke. Jeremy pushed onto his side and found himself on the concrete facing the gate. The Jeep was a burning wreck, a permanent part of the guardhouse. Everyone was dead or gone, except Deborah. Instead of racing off to Indian Springs or Las Vegas, she sat in her idling Hummer down the road. Then it moved, creeping toward him. Jeremy took a grenade and held it close to his chest. The Bradfords had been smart enough to will all their fortune to a charity if something happened to their son. If Jeremy blew up both Deborah and Cody, the U.S. government got nothing. If he could somehow get her by herself, his employers would get 50% instead of only 10% once the new tax law took effect. The Hummer continued to inch forward. Jeremy set the grenade by his side and reached for the .45 in his waistband. His fingers wrapped around the handle when Deborah stopped 15 yards away. The driver's door opened, and Jeremy slipped the gun from his holster and held his breath. He hoped he looked as dead as he felt. Deborah stepped out of the Hummer. The open door blocked most of her body. Her blood-speckled face peered through the window. No longer confident of his aim, Jeremy hoped she'd come a little closer. She stayed there for several seconds, then ducked into the idling vehicle. Was she going to run him over? That's what Jeremy would have done. A moment later, she came back out, holding something in her hands. Even through one narrowed eye, Jeremy could see it wasn't a gun. A flash blinded him. He raised the .45 and fired 1, 2, 3 times, but she dove into the Hummer. Jeremy continued to fire as the SUV flew in reverse. Jeremy got to his feet and limped out the front gate. He stopped where Deborah had been only a moment before. A small puddle of blood pooled on the concrete. With any luck, he had hit something vital, and she'd bleed out before she made it to town. Either way, Jeremy was screwed. The Way had let Deborah escape and tried to kill him. He'd been set up and cut off. He should have known better than to trust the controllers. It couldn't be long before jet fighters out of Nellis Air Force Base responded to the explosions. The charred vehicles inside the facility were no longer an option, so Jeremy headed for the top of the mountain to retrieve the rental car with the documents tying this to the Muslims. Only Jeremy wouldn't be driving to the pickup location as originally planned. He was on his own.
This has been a presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.